Welcome to Sib Spot. Today's Reddit stories are from MaliciousCompliance. Story 1 is by M0 Savage. By the book. 20 plus years ago, I was working at a commissary, think grocery store, on an army post. I worked in the produce department, and one of our duties was to make fruit and vegetable trays for customers on order. I started out making them pretty much like everyone else. Celery in this spot, cherry tomatoes here, broccoli like so. One day an officer's wife asked me if I could make a vegetable tray, but she wanted it a little bit fancier. I love to cook and wow people with my knife skills. I sliced things thin and layered them, and it was so pretty that I had something that looked like it belonged on a wedding buffet. Of course, other people saw it and they wanted something similar, so I became the veggie and fruit tray guy. My supervisor and I didn't get along well. I would stop what I was doing and take a customer to the products they were trying to find, or I'd go in search if I didn't know exactly where, especially after a reset. For some reason, my supervisor didn't like it. She didn't see it as going above and beyond, she saw it as abandoning my duties. Anyways, one day she told me that I couldn't make the trays anymore unless I followed the book, which she handed me. No more fancy trays because it took too long. It took me the same amount of time as anyone else making a regular tray. I cracked open the book on my break and smiled. You want by the book? You get by the book. The next tray I made took 4 hours. My boss almost went berserk. I told her that with each individual fruit or vegetable, I had to wash, sanitize, rinse them separately because that was what the book says. And with 8 different fruits or vegetables, I had to spend about half an hour filling and draining the sink each time as to not cause cross-contamination. I transferred to a different section shortly after that. Doing things by the book, she was just unhappy you were doing it by the slice. Our next story today is by Path of Uncertainty. You want to put how much concrete in your Civic? Many years ago, I worked in a locally run store that sold a bit of everything. I was the low-paid teenager that carried heavy things to people's vehicles. While working one day, I get called over the radio that a customer needed 12 bags of concrete, 80 pounds each. I was expecting to see a pickup truck or something similar backed up to our loading area. Instead, I saw a small Honda Civic that was there for me. Thinking it was a mistake, I asked the driver to relocate momentarily as I had someone coming to pick up multiple bags of concrete. Imagine my surprise when they told me they were the customer I was waiting for. I asked the customer how much they wanted to take in each trip, as I believed the nearly 1,000 pounds of concrete might be too much for such a small vehicle to handle safely. The customer became aggravated and insisted that they were taking it all at once. I quickly ran this past the store owner to make sure I wouldn't be held liable for any damages. I ran back, apologized to the customer, and began loading the bags. As I loaded everything up, the customer made several quips about how the customer is always right and that I was too young and naive to understand that vehicles are engineered within a margin of safety. It quickly became apparent that there was no play left in the suspension, but at this point I just stopped questioning things. I couldn't fit all the bags in the trunk, so the customer cleared their back seat, and I loaded that up as well. Upon leaving the loading area, you could clearly hear things rubbing. As the car went to exit the parking lot, it passed over the elevation change between the lot and the road, and there was a loud pop of something breaking, followed by scraping. I could see that the driver was irate in the car. After a moment, they got out, looked around and under their car. The guy sheepishly asked for my cell phone because his had died and he needed to make a few phone calls. A short time later, a tow truck came to remove the car, and the guy waited in our lot for nearly an hour until his wife could come pick him up. If there's anything you take away from all of these stories, it is for 100% sure the customer is not always right. Down in the comments by Angry Deuce. I drive a little Kia Rio subcompact. I remember right before COVID, my wife and I were ripping out the grass in this one really awkward part of our yard by the rear patio, and replacing it with pea gravel so that we didn't have to deal with it anymore. I estimated we needed about 12 40-pound bags and went down to Ace Hardware to pick it up in my car. 12 by 40 pounds is only 480 pounds. Basically 2 or 3 full-grown men, so I figured no biggie. Put the seats down in the back to spread the weight out more and load it up. 4 neat stacks of 3 bags. Things didn't feel right as I was driving away, so I almost immediately pulled into a nearby gas station. My rear end was basically bottomed out, and my front end was darn near pointing at the sky. Turning the car into the gas station had seemed difficult, and now I knew why. The effing front tires were likely barely making contact with the road, or at least had a lot less pressure on them than they were supposed to, hence why the turn was so hard to make. That's how I ended up having to put it all out in the gas station parking lot while people gawked at me and put 4 bags into each of the 3 unoccupied seats in my car. That worked a lot better. Go figure. Putting your seats down and distributing it evenly, you would think would work, but it must have been that there was just too much towards the back end doing that. Our last story today is by Defiant Lion, 8183. Send an internal approval doc to external to approve? Okie doke. Disclaimers. 1. No one will be hurt by the malicious compliance following. The users involved have 20 plus years of experience doing the thing, and this is a tick and flick document. 2. The document itself is a compliance document taken from a full evidence pack that should only be used in full and only by qualified assessors. This is legislation related to. So, a few months ago, as usual, my boss finds a random bit of information that is affecting her KPIs. 30 people don't have a box X ticked off because they've already been in the company 20 plus years and X box was only initiated 5 years ago. So she finds an information pack containing all the requirements to get X box ticked. Pulls a single assessment page with a clear guide that it's for our team only to sign. Tells me via email to get all 20 people's external leaders to sign it as evidence. I was very aware that this is not the correct way to do this, it's just the least amount of paperwork. So I did due diligence and took it sideways to the team next to us who handles stuff like this. Their leader authorizes it without thinking it through. I explain my hesitation, and another leader overhears it, also says, "If it's in writing, you can action it," with a sly smile. She knew what I would do. Light bulb, cue malicious compliance. I sent the entire email chain, unedited, and pointed out both authorizations. Attached the piece of assessment and sent it with the list of names to all external leaders from the official shared inbox and not my own. I sent this on day 1 of my boss going on leave. I had 10 emails sent back in less than 30 minutes refusing to sign it with a big WTF. They CC'd in all relevant people and pointed out how this breaks compliance regulations. I replied, excusing myself from future speculations until a directive from on high came down. 3 days later, I start to hear rumblings from the big bosses at the head office. My boss still isn't back, and they would like an urgent meeting to discuss process. Outcome? My team is now required to get approval from the document control team before any external document is sent out. I've happily stopped editing these horrendous documents Big Boss sends to me to send out. She doesn't ask for edits, grammar check, etc. I'm simply forwarding them to doc control from shared inbox with her signature still attached. They have been sending everything back, slowing the team down by days at a time per task. She still didn't explicitly know or ask me to edit in the past, and she didn't know I stopped. Therefore is very Pikachu face why suddenly her docs are all wrong. Her KPIs are tanking. Did you wait until you knew she'd be out of the office before you did this? Because that is truly malicious. She told you to do it though, but she kicked herself in the rear doing that. All I could think of for the first couple paragraphs with this when they kept saying tick the Xbox was Microsoft Xbox 360s and stuff. Why do they call it an Xbox 360? Because you take one look at it turn 360 degrees, and walk away. Done in the comments by Tarlon. Never, never, never fix a supervisor's mistake in a doc after they've handed it off to be delivered and won't see it again. Not only will you be doing invisible work you'll never get credit for, you're also setting yourself up to take the blame for some future problem if it ever comes out. After all, any future error might have been introduced in your unreviewed edits. And if you want a more generous interpretation, not showing people what they're messing up means they keep making the same mistakes forever. Malicious compliance, okay, I'll do what you want, but your KPIs are gonna tank. Our stories for today have come to a close. If you enjoy this content, please click like or hit subscribe. It actually does not cost you any money. I know anybody around my age is used to hearing the word subscribe means you're gonna pay something. Not on YouTube. Clicking on subscribe just helps me reach more people. Until we meet again, have an extraordinary day.